Hello, everyone, everybody who's joining. Welcome. This is Kristina Mand-Lakhiani. I'm co-founder of Mind Valley. Welcome to my honest conversations. I think I haven't had them for quite a while. Drum roll. My first guest after a really long break in my honest conversations today is Dr. Joanna Martin. Hello, Joanna. Hello, Joe,
Hey,
right?
Christine. Yeah, you can call me Joe. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So Joanna is actually, well, you can tell from the way I presented, is a doctor. You're a medical doctor by education, right? But then
That's right.
you actually shifted your career into coaching and executive coaching and working on leadership, working with women. So Joanna is an entrepreneur as well, a co-founder of a few businesses, as far as I understand, and one leadership and coaching business called OneAMini. And also my today's guest, and we're going to talk about a very interesting topic. So the topic today is setting boundaries. And it's a super interesting topic because I think we all, at some point in our life, can get back to that moment where we suddenly realize that I should be saying no, and where we draw the boundary for the first time. I do not know if you remember that moment, but I remember actually becoming comfortable with the idea that it is a very valuable skill. So before I jump into our conversation, honest conversation with Joanna, I want to ask you to write if you remember the first time you actually consciously said no, not just because you didn't want, but because you did that as setting a boundary, that you realized to yourself that, yes, it's important. Joanna, but for you, the first question is, how did you even come to this topic? Is it through your own experience? Did you have to learn this the hard way? Why did you come to this topic, and why is this important?
Yeah, well, I mean, the specific little piece that we can chat about setting boundaries, I think, is one tiny little piece of the big picture, and that is that as women stepping into our power, which I believe is needed more than ever right now. For a lot of us means saying no more than we're saying yes. Do you know, our tendency as women, because of how we grow up culturally, the cultural paradigm that we grow up in, as well as our own family history that teaches, not in every family, but in many families, little girls to not get angry. And angry is the feeling that says, you know, boundaries being crossed, right? So we're taught not to feel angry, not to get cross. We're told to have emotions outside, you know, in some cases. But as little girls, we're not necessarily parented effectively around boundary setting. And I think this is worse for girls than it is for boys culturally. As I say, not in every family. So I think this is a tendency that we have, and we tend to end up, many of us, in a very people-pleasing kind of situation, and in an archetype of the martyr, you know, where we put everybody else's needs ahead of our own. Now, the reason this is really critical for me is, yes, at a personal level, I became an overachiever, people pleaser, do you know, in my own kind of upbringing, which got me to the state of incredible success because the people that I liked to please were bosses and you know, mentors and so on. So I had some really great role models I was trying to please, which turned me into a very effective, very effective at what I did, whether that be medicine or coaching or whatever. But I got to a point where I nearly burned out by the age of 30. And it was in that moment that I realized that things had to change. You know, I was training for a large personal development organization, one of the fastest ones growing in the world at that time. And, you know, leading presentations to audiences of up to 3,000 at a time, having a great time, but very nearly burned out. And one of the things that was missing for me was the ability to set boundaries. But I think also very importantly, it was that I had no role models for what strong feminine looked like. Do you know? It was either Superwoman, which is how much I was very much operating, you know, Superwoman kind of martyr, or, you know, or what, I didn't really know. So that was a real turning point moment where I started to dig in and look at new ways of being and develop new skill sets for myself.
So, Joanna, I have a question for you. You mentioned that it is harder for women usually to say no than for men, and also my personal experience is that when it comes to your family, to the people that are important to you, to the your loved ones, it's particularly hard to say no. And if you have children, I have children, you kind of learn that martyrdom is so glorified, if I can say so, that
Yeah.
it is part of being a good mother, part of being a good woman, to actually bring yourself as a sacrifice to the altar of your family. I remember when I got married, I actually believed, I didn't even question that idea, that I have to give up everything that I had built and follow my husband, because that's how I grew up, with the idea that the woman is molding herself around the people in her family. How do you balance that that actually need maybe to support your family, especially with children? It's hard because you
Yeah.
do give up certain privileges of a happy life for the children. How do you balance this decision? Like, when do I sacrifice myself, if that's the correct word? It's actually a pretty heavy word. And where is it enough? Where do you actually, because just as a background, I'll explain. I had a career here in Estonia. By the age of 25, when I was getting married, back then that was normal age to get married, I had made a beautiful career in the government. I got paid really well. I had an amazing life. But I gave it all up and I moved after Vision to New York, and there was no one there. I didn't even have a visa that allowed me to work. So I was at home. And I don't regret, but still I'm wondering if that was the correct thing to do. So yes, the ball back to you.
I think you're exactly right. And I think your question is, how do we find the balance? And I think we have to start by pulling back and looking at why, right? We've got to look at the why. What are the pieces that have us make these decisions? And we've got to bring some consciousness to it, right? So I think the first thing to appreciate is, if we look culturally for we women, and this is slightly different in different countries around the world, and I'm interested to hear how it is in Estonia, but culturally around the world, there are only a couple of sources of power or types of power that women are allowed. And I say allowed in inverted commas, like culturally, that we celebrate in women, or that we acknowledge. One is, in the corporate world, we'll tolerate a bossy boots, power over aggressive superwoman kind of power. We'll tolerate it. We don't necessarily like it, but we have that archetype around. The other is, the sex appeal one, the front of the magazines, all of the media kind of stuff that we see. We allow the sexuality, the heightened, almost over sexualized thing in our media. So these are the kinds of power that we talk about for women. And the only other one that we will allow, but only in the home, is the mother energy. And it is a source of power that in our culture we respect. In fact, we don't necessarily respect the sex kitten and we don't respect the bossy boots, but we do respect the mother culturally. So I think this is why for so many women, even women who aren't mothers, even women who are amazing leaders inside their organization or leaders inside their small business, end up predominantly stuck in what I call the mother power type, the archetypal energy of mother, because it is the only one in our culture that is really owned, acknowledged, front and centered, and appreciated, And this was what I kind of identified for myself. And I realized, hang on a second, if I want to be differently, and the thing about the mother, mother is a power type, like we talk about one of many 5 women's power types, 4 of the mature archetypes of the feminine, according to Jung, and 1 extra that we put in the warrioress. And we can talk about those in more detail. But when mother sacrifices, that is part of what actually defines that mother energy. And she will sacrifice for those that she deems to be at her hearth. We call it the space of the hearth. And that is, her family. It could be her immediate family. You might have a friend or 2 that you will willingly sacrifice for. And sacrifice for me just means, you said, it's a bit of a heavy word, but for me, sacrifice just means I'll put your needs ahead of my own. Do you know, I might be on my knees, but like the mother of a newborn, when you wake up at 1 a.m. and the baby's crying, I remember with my son, James, I was out of bed and I was in there into him with the boob in his mouth before I'd even noticed that I needed to go to the toilet. Do you know, we just put the kids' needs ahead of our own. My counterpoint, my husband, right? And this, I think, is one of the differences. If it was his turn to get up to James, he would get up. He would have a sip of water, baby's screaming in the next room, have a sip of water, walk down, go to the bathroom, right, get himself prepared, and then go in, by which stage, you know, every cell of mother energy is going, stop it. So I think there's a little piece here around mother archetype that willingly sacrifices. She is that place of unconditional love, unconditional acceptance. Now that's great if you've only got 5, 6, 7 people at your hearth. The problem is, as it's the only archetype that we tend to get respect for, we think that's the way to have respect out in the wider world, in our workplaces, in our communities, with our neighbors, with our friends. But it works exactly the opposite way. We end up sacrificing for neighbors, sacrificing for siblings all of the time, sacrificing for friends that we don't even really care about, sacrificing for, you know, what other people think, you know, and that's where we end up becoming depleted. And when we are depleted, we can't be in any sort of strength. So it's for that reason that I believe when we talk about finding the balance, the first piece of balance is between all of the power types. Here at OneAMini, we talk about these 5 women's power types. We've got a deck of cards.
I was just going to ask, please, let's talk about it.
Because let's talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So we've just been talking about, and I'll show you the pickies for those of you who are with us, but this is the mother power type, right? And you don't have to be a biological mother to have strong mother power type. Absolutely not. I remember we had a guest at one of our One Woman conferences, Anne Bowden, who is the CEO of Starling Bank, which is a fintech, I guess you'd still call them startup. They're a couple of years in, you know, multi-million pound organization, amazing woman. But her story was, you know, around mother, she didn't have children of her own, but had a lot of mother energy and had to learn not to take that into the boardroom. You don't want to be the person making the tea if you want to land the distinctions, which is why we need all of the others as well. And this one is particularly important when it comes to setting boundaries, and that is our queen energy, right? Queen energy is the part of us that can see the vision for the whole realm, right? The realm is everybody in our world that we care for. That could be our extended family. It could be charities that we support. It could be neighbors. It could be siblings. And queen energy sees the vision for the whole realm. She is also really clear that her needs need to come first, because if she's not okay, the realm is not okay. And because she is humble, a lot of people associate queen with overexpressed, or what I would call drama queen, you know, only the blue M&Ms in my dressing room, you know, that's not queen, right? that's drama queen. And so a lot of people don't like to step into queen because we think we're going to turn into diva or drama queen, right? But when we're in a strong centered queen, we know that looking after ourselves is actually a prerequisite for being able to be of service to the realm. And queen knows that she doesn't have to do all the doing. You know, people actually support her vision, not support her, the person, but support the vision that she has for the realm. And that's a critical piece. So the more okay we can get with this way of being, the easier it becomes to set boundaries, right? Because she's very happy to say no, right? Really.
But that archetype is connected to the idea that you have the vision for your whole realm, not just for yourself or those.
That's exactly right. And sometimes I think a lot of women in our community, when they first start on this journey, they're like, wow, I don't have a vision for the world or anything. But it can just be that forward-thinking vision of, I have a vision for my family that we don't fight and shout before dinner every night, right? It could be that. And when you know that that's the vision that you have, that there's a calm space that you're providing for all of your family, then we back up and we go, okay, what do you need to do to replenish your needs? What do you need to do to set boundaries? What are the really clear ways we need to communicate around that kind of stuff, you know? And that becomes a really critical piece. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, really related to our ability to access that queen energy and have that vision is the next one, which is our lover power type, Kristina. So lover power type is definitely, yes, the part of us that is our sensuality and our sexuality, right? All the good stuff lives in lover land. But more than that, she is also the center of self-care. So she is the she is the part of us that knows we are gifted just this one body in this lifetime. And it is our job to cherish it. Not just cherish it, but to bring it pleasure, to look after it, to nurture it and nourish it. It's funny, whenever I do a corporate presentation and I pull out the lover energy, a lot of people are like, whoa, no, we're not talking about sex here. Thank you very much. Is this lovely?
I'm afraid of that. That's the interesting thing, because of how controversial this topic is. A lot of the women that I know are afraid to even express that strength or power.
Exactly, right? And this is the challenge with it, where we cut off from that lover energy, which is where our sexuality and sensuality lives. When we cut off from it, we are also cutting off from the part of us that puts our body and our needs, like things like lunch and enough water and a walk outside. It all lives in the same place, right? So one of the things I always say in a corporate sort of presentation is that we have to talk about lover, because every case of burnout that I see in the case of women and men, the same is true for men, is someone who has a very low lover power type. So we have a profiling tool that our clients do. And invariably, if someone is burned out, their lover is in their boots, because they're not looking after themselves. We also talk about lover as the gateway power type, because if we don't replenish our energy, how can you have a vision for how you want things to be otherwise? You can't access queen without having some energy inside you, You can't access unconditional love and unconditional acceptance of the mother without having some energy inside of you, some sense of yourself. So it's so critical, I think, to recognize this kind of lover piece. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So then the other two, just to work them in, are the warrioress. So warrioress is the part of us that is youthful and energetic. People with a strong warrioress are always really physically active, but also very mentally flexible, no matter what their age is. But she is also the part that fights for justice. When she sees something that pisses her off, she'll do something about it. Whether that's someone bad-mouthing someone on public transport, or like Greta Thunberg, I think embodies the warrioress energy really, really powerfully as a leader. She's an extraordinary case of that. Warrioress is the other power type that will sacrifice, that will put something else's needs ahead of her own. And in this case, it's the cause. So the warrioress will, think about the woman who's protesting against the felling of a beautiful old growth rainforest, who chains herself for days and weeks and months to the trees and lives in the trees. I grew up in Tasmania in Australia, and there are a lot of warrioresses out in the forest defending the forest, where they will sacrifice their own needs for the good of the cause. So the point being that the reason we need all five is that none of us can sustainably sacrifice either for our family or for a cause without getting into burnout. We can't do it without getting into burnout. So we need our lover and we need our queen, and we also need the final one, which is the sorceress energy. Ooh. So sorceress energy, I think, would be very well known by Mind Valley tribe. Might not necessarily call it sorceress, but it's the part of you that connects to the something greater. Now, we chose the word sorceress because we shorthand the something greater, whether you call that Jesus or Allah or universal consciousness or my higher self or Mother Nature or whatever you call it. The force, right?
The force.
The force. We shorthanded it OneAMini to source, right? And so she is the sorceress, the part that connects to that. And so she is the part that connects to our faith, to our wisdom. And when everything feels like too much hard work and it's all being achieved through grit and determination, it's because we're not accessing that part of us that can create magic. And I don't mean like magic, like as in, spells and all of that, although that might be your thing and that's totally okay. What I mean is you're running late for the train and magically the train is running late and you get on it. You need a new assistant because your assistant just resigned, and magically a friend says, oh my God, I've got this perfect person for the job. It's those little million unseen helping hands that happen every single day. So that's sorceress energy. So when
And
we
I can
can,
see by the comments that people relate to the sorceress
right,
energy.
I'm not even slightly surprised, right? You only have to have a look at some of the Mind Valley topics to go, this is the language we speak. And now one of the things that we do notice, and we see a bit of this in our community, so we have two sorts of women come into our community. Some are the very spiritual who are looking for the practical. And we also have a lot of very practical who are kind of burned out. So we kind of have this melting pot in our community, which is really beautiful. But what we see with the very spiritual is that sometimes they're a little bit overexpressed in their sorceress. So they have a very high sorceress score, but their queen energy and their more grounding ones like warrioress are a bit low. So they tend to sometimes, head away with the fairies a little bit and not be able to.
Can I ask you on this topic? Do you have any tests to just check which energies?
Yeah, we do.
I think that
we absolutely do.
Do you have a link to share? Because it would be so interesting to see which energy do I bring in my leadership, because I want to I actually want to shift the conversation soon into very practical, but that would be so interesting to test yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, we've got what I've put together for everybody is at oneamini.co.uk/enough. If you go there, you'll get two things. One is a boundary setting conversation, which I'm sure we'll have a chat, and 3 different scripts that you can use to set boundaries. The second thing is off the back of that, we'll invite you to do the power type profile. So we'll send you a link, we have to give out custom links to it. So I can't kind of give out the link sort of directly now. But if you get the gift, then we'll send you out a link to do your profile on the back, your own personalized one, and you get a score for each of them. It shows you then where your growth areas are, but also what your strengths are, right? Mm-hmm. Thank you, Bonnie, for putting that in there. Yeah, thank you. oneamini.co.uk/enough. The word enough will take you through to what you need to do for that. And obviously then lots of great information about the power types and stuff as well. But yeah, it will give you a bit of a path to see, A, what are you excellent at? So you can rely on it and know what your strengths are and superpowers are. But B, where's that opportunity for growth? Because we believe this is not a personality profile, as in it's not stagnant. We have a lot of women come into our community, especially if they're burned out, and they can be quite low across the board on all of these, because they're spending more time in superwoman or martyr or victim, sometimes bitch, these not so empowering archetypes. And then over time, when they get nourished and start prioritizing their needs and putting themselves first, heaven forbid, if you were so used to being in mother, right? Or me, putting me first, they can start to access all of them more powerfully. It's a really profound shift that can occur.
Thank you. I actually want to talk about how to say no practically. We're definitely getting there. And if I forget it or if I get carried away, because it's honest conversations, I always take things where
we just go wherever we go, right?
I go with the feel. And right now I just can't help asking that, because we were talking about women leaders, essentially, or women in leadership role, if I can say so, outside the family, of course. And what I've noticed, and I think this situation is shifting a little bit, but what I've noticed is that, at least in the West, when the woman gets into the leadership role, let's say in business, right, in the board, she kind of stops being a woman and she puts on the pants and becomes a man. There was this beautiful Pixar movie called Furl that I really strongly recommend that illustrated this idea, is that we think that if we become a little bit more of a man, we become stronger. And it's just so against my inclination of being yourself in any kind of circumstances. So is there any explanation how does this happen? If you could comment on that, that would be, because for me it's just a mystery, but I would like to, because you work with that, I would like to hear it put into a nicer picture for me.
Let me, because this is something I had to understand. I looked into it to understand it for me, but then I saw very clearly what's going on globally, right? So let's look at it in a few contexts. Number one, let's have a look at what is happening at a national level. So every little girl is born into a nation, and every nation celebrates, values, or respects masculinity or femininity relatively, more or less. So there was some really interesting research done by a gentleman called Hofstadter in 2001, and you can look up the research on his website. If you just Google Hofstadter values-based research, you'll find his website, some really interesting stuff there. But he rated every country in the world on the scale of masculinity versus femininity. Now, for him and for many associated researchers as well, we call values that are more associated with the masculine things like individualism, like I've got to do it on my own, right? We seem to do it on my own, that kind of hero kind of approach, assertiveness, competition, winning, material rewards for success, those sorts of things. That's kind of more masculine in their nature. Or feminine in their nature were things like community, collaboration, humility, working for the whole, and so on. And he rated a lot of the countries in the world. Now, I don't know the scores for every country, and I'm afraid I don't know Estonia, but I should have looked. I should have looked for you, Kristina.
I'll tell you, we have 2 women presidents, and half of our government are women. So
this is good. This bodes very well. This bodes very well.
I'm not sure if all of them are purely feminine still, but
yeah. Well, this is it. So, because when we're looking at the national culture, what do we celebrate culturally? Japan was the most masculine with a score of 95 out of 100 and masculine, right? Where I come from, Australia was the 16th most masculine country in the world. Where I live, the UK, 9th most masculine country in the world. The US, I think, is 11. So a lot of these countries, and please do go and have a look. It's really interesting to see where you come from. Celebrate individualism, do it by yourself. Celebrate competition, celebrate all of these, and kind of aggressively going after an outcome, right? As opposed to a lot of our Nordic nations, bless the Nordic nations, which are very much at the feminine end of the spectrum, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, where it is no surprise to me, and they were down, scores of 6, 16, 23, around that kind of thing, very much at the feminine end of the spectrum. And it's no surprise to me that in those countries is where we see the greatest rates of home birth, natural term breastfeeding, feeding a child until they're 2, 3, 4, as opposed to 6 months, penal systems that actually work, justice systems that work pretty well. Lots of, really good women in corporate leadership initiatives. No surprise, right? No surprise, because and Hofstadter makes a really interesting observation. He doesn't say that feminine cultures are better for women and masculine cultures are better for men. Feminine cultures, those cultures that are better, that are more feminine in their nature, work better for everyone, men and women alike. And so the first piece we've got to understand of why we turn into what you call like a man at work, what I would call superwoman, right, is part one. We are born into a nation that tells us, win, be great, do it all by yourself. Don't do it with others or it's weak, and be the best. That's what's celebrated. Then we come into a workplace, right? And most workplaces around the world, there's not very many, I'd say it's probably less than 5%. Most workplaces are very masculine paradigms as well. If you think about it, women were only allowed in workplaces about 100 years ago. We weren't even allowed in the realm of commerce and economy and all of that kind of stuff. Our place was at home. So it still echoes in so much of how we work, that hierarchical structure, the competition, the not failing, all of that stuff is there. So then we know that that's what we're heading to in our education. So there's another reason that we do it. And then in the families that we're born into, I don't know what it was like in your family, Kristina, but I was born into a family where, my parents were great. They're totally great. They were never pressured me to become a doctor or anything. But when a little girl who's age 6 announces to her 2 parents who are pharmacists that she wants to be a doctor, it was certainly met with a lot of excellent, great, and positive encouragement. And as a little girl, achievement, like doing great at school or doing great at anything, was celebrated. So pretty soon as a little girl, I started going, and this is not true. My parents loved me no matter what I did, but I still made it mean in my head, love and achievement are the same. I'm not worthy of love unless I'm achieving, was just what my tiny little brain made that into. And so then I became an overachiever. So you add overachiever tendencies to workplaces that want you to do it all by yourself and win and compete and be the best, to a cultural paradigm. For any woman that wants to be taken seriously in the world, right? And I say that taken seriously in the world, we therefore turn into we then celebrate competition, achievement, these masculine values. Now, what happens when we celebrate masculine values is we then shift our energy and how we go at the world. And here's the piece, right? That focused, aggressive, going at the world, achieving energy in a male body is moderated by a hormone. And in the chat channel, you can let me know what you think that hormone is going to be. But in a male body, right, we know that if we inject rats with, is someone going to tell me what it is? There you go. Thank you, Eleanor. If we inject rats with testosterone, they get aggressive, they get goal-focused, they get individualistic. Testosterone does it. Now, we women in our bodies have some testosterone, but we have a fraction of the testosterone that men do. And so when we want to be in that state, we have to rely on, as Gitanjali has just said, we have to rely on then our adrenaline and cortisol axis, which are our stress hormones. So in order to stay in that mode, we rely on those stress hormones. And this is my hypothesis on why women are burning out much faster at higher rates than men are, because our national paradigms, our work paradigms, and our personal paradigms are forcing us into this kind of way of being. So we turn into superwoman in an effort to compete, to be at the table, to be taken seriously, because we think superwoman, our fear-based, adrenaline-driven cortisol self, is the only way that we can be of value to the paradigm. And at OneAMini, we put forward that that is absolutely not the case.
So I've noticed that actually becoming more feminine in this kind of environment is sometimes dangerous. For example, last year, this very young woman became the Prime Minister of Finland. I don't remember her name, Sanna something. And she put up a picture of herself in a suit where her cleavage was very deep and was massively criticized. Another example is Kamala Harris, the way she was portrayed in some famous magazine, I don't remember if it was Vanity Fair or what, was also massively criticized because it was considered inappropriate. And if you look at any female leader, like strong female leader, it seems that they are wearing the same mask, the same costume. And if you mistaken or take a step to the side, you are so massively criticized. So is there even a chance for us to come, and it's not just clothing. Clothing is just a very easy thing to explain the point. It's actually try to make your point in the room of testosterone-driven men in a quiet feminine voice. You'll be talked over. But the costume is a very easy example. Is there ever a chance for us to remain women and still be heard and still be actually have the power to change things in your society?
Absolutely. And this is what we need to know, because most of us don't embrace our femininity into our leadership and into our way of being for exactly this reason, Kristina. We think it's either weak or going to be picked apart, right? That we're going to be challenged. So this was exactly the inquiry that I had. And my answer to that question is this. There is no doubt in anybody's mind that the queen is a feminine archetype, right? She is feminine. There is no doubt about that. But she has gravitas. So I think this is the point. It is not about what you wear. It is not about all of these things. And what I would put out right now, ladies, if you want to be a leader, you're going to get criticized. And I think the research out of Harvard shows that you're going to be criticized 80% more than a man for how you choose to say things, what you choose to wear, almost everything, right? You only have to look at the research. So you will be criticized. Does that mean we don't do it? No, it does not. Because we are the pioneers. We are the generation that make it so our little girls go, oh, okay, that was that next step. Each generation has I think a role to play. So we do it. And you know what? You bloody well wear your cleavage if you want to, and you're strong enough to take that, right? If what is really critical to you is gravitas around your message, would I be wearing something that showed off my cleavage? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't make that choice because we still live in that paradigm. But it's got nothing to do with the clothes. The energy of being strong and feminine is about having access to all 5 of these power types at all times, but beyond just our own inner strength, because the queen can very clearly say, no, that is not okay. I'd like to introduce this particular piece. It's not, you said you don't just speak up in your soft feminine voice. You see, even that, like that, we assume that feminine means a soft voice. No, it doesn't. Now that might be lover, but even lover can be useful sometimes, right? She can disband an argument. She can go, well, I think we're kind of, we're dancing around this a little bit here, guys. Come on. She can bring some lightness and some levity to it. But feminine is not timid. Feminine is not quiet. Feminine, it can be absolutely raising the roof. And I mean, we saw this on Clapham Common here just last week in London, protesting against, or a vigil which turned into a protest against reclaiming the streets for women and being safe. So I think this is really important. And this is the work that we try so hard to land with ladies here at OneAMini, is a lot of what we think is feminine is not. It's that masculine paradigm painting of femininity that has us think that femininity is not strong, that femininity is second to, that femininity is a complement to masculinity, to make, like, fuck off, No way, it is wild. Femininity is wild. If you look at Mother Nature, I think that's the real place to look here. It is volcanoes, it is hurricanes, it is all of that, right? And that is the place that we need to come from.
Can I interrupt you? But that we are also criticized for, because I've heard, and this literally, if there are any guys, just take notice. If any guy ever tells me, oh, you're on PMMS, I'm ready to punch the face. It's like, even this is considered feminine, like emotions, and that is also criticized. The power.
It will be criticized. This is why it's up to us, right? It will be criticized. It's how are we going to handle this criticism? And I want to be really clear here. I believe that if we want to shift, the vision for OneAMini, the vision for what we see here in the world, is that we get to a point where parity of leadership is just the norm, whether it be in government, whether it be in organizations, whether it be in community organizations, that men and women are represented equally. I mean, like, why should it not be so? In order to get there, a few things need to change, right? 2 of the critical things that need to change are the systems, structures, and the unconscious bias, right? So that needs to change, but it's also the empowerment of women. We need to, when the doors are open, be able to step up. But here's the thing. Those of us that are stepping up now, we will be criticized. Why? Because the paradigm is still masculine and we are different than it. Does that mean we don't do it? No, it does not. What it means is we should band together as women and with our allies. We have a lot of allies in men around us as well. And I'm sure there are a lot of them on the line today who are allies, right? That when someone criticizes you for having emotions, that you can respond to that and say, yeah, I have emotions. Yeah, my period's due next week. I also have superpowers at this time for bullshit. And you're speaking bullshit right now, my friend. This is about boundary setting. And again, one of the things we look at with the power types is how they overlay our cycles, because PMS is actually when we have superpowers for queen energy, our ability to see the truth of what's going on. And we get frustrated the week before our period because we can see what's not right. The problem is we pick fights instead of setting boundaries. So it's both of these things. But I guess the point I want to land, Kristina, is we will continue to be criticized. What we need to therefore do is be together in it, stand alongside each other, open up to our allies, pave the way not only for white women, but women of color and the entire LGBTQ community. And it's like the whole thing. All of us need to work together, because the predominantly, white male paradigm in which we live, which is not to please, yes, not every white man is a problem. It is not that, but the cultural paradigm we live in makes it easy if you are a bloke and your skin color happens to be white, and it is less easy for everybody kind of on a sliding scale downwards from that in terms of ease. So yes, for those of us who have resources, for those of us who have this resilience, it's our job, I believe, to continue to step up, to call out the paradigms, to say, do you know what? I should be able to wear what I want. I should be able to say what I want. Anyway, I'm on a soapbox, Kristina. Goodness me, you got me started, honey.
I'm so enjoying this conversation, but I'm going to be a little mother here, as in sacrifice my own privilege of asking you questions. And Bianca, do we have someone on the line to actually ask the question of Joanna? So I'll give that chance, because I can see that people are commenting. They're enjoying the conversation too. Bianca?
Yes, we do. We have a question that got most of the votes. How do I distinguish between being rude or setting my boundaries?
That's a really interesting question. Okay, I'm going to answer the question that's not being asked, right? That's not being asked. And that is, how do I know where my boundaries are? Because you would only be asking if you're being rude because you're more worried about what somebody else thinks than about yourself, right? Does that make sense? So in that case, you're only being rude is a concept which only lives in the construct of thinking about somebody else. It only lands with somebody else. So therefore, if you're worried about what they think, then you're not asking the right question. You're not asking, where is my okay line versus my not okay line? And a lot of women really have trouble identifying where their okay line is versus their not okay line, because we're so used to letting our boundaries slip that it's not until we get to livid and resentful and fire up, and then we turn into bitch and we do land as rude. But the problem was well before that. It was not knowing where the okay line is. So the journey has to back up and slow down and go, okay, what am I okay with and what am I not okay with? And when you can clearly have access to that, and in the Enough is Enough report that you're going to get in that gift that we're sharing with you ladies, we'll talk about how to help you to do that. When you get clear on where your okay versus not okay line is, then it just becomes a consistent practice of setting a boundary from your queen energy, where you might say something like, it's okay with me if you want to be late for work, but that is not okay with how we roll in this organization. If you continue to show up late, then I'm afraid I'm going to have to let you go, right? It's with love. It's okay with me if you want to continue to come home late from work, my spouse, without calling me, but I will not tolerate it. It's okay if you choose to make that, but it makes me angry when I don't know if you're okay. So please call me if you're going to be late. What do you need to give me what I need? So when you know what the okay line is, then having a boundary setting conversation, and we've got 3 different ones in the report that we're giving with you, 3 different ways to have those boundary conversations. Then you're going to be coming from queen energy as opposed to resentful bitch that lashes out and does become rude. Then things will dramatically change.
Thank you. That's actually such a profound distinction. Bianca, is there someone else who can come online? Because it will be exciting to have some guests here.
For sure. There's another question which got a lot of votes from Tiffany. Tiffany, if you feel okay, you can activate your camera. If not, we can just hear you.
Hi, Tiffany.
Hello. I believe my question was, how do I start the shift from superwoman to like queen and all of the other good energies?
Great question. Really great question, my love. So the first place, of course, is awareness. And that's what today's about, right? Is raising awareness of what's going on. So well done. You know, you can start to see it. The next point then is for most people, it starts with first, replenish your energy. So we have 15 soft power principles that we talk about at OneAMini. And the very first one is first replenish your energy. Superwoman is usually stuck in our system because we have been neglecting our own needs for an extended period of time. Is that the case with your situation, Tiffany? Do you tend to put other people before you and just keep going really hard?
Yeah, I'm a mom of 2 young kids, and a lot of days I don't eat until I go to work.
Right. This is it. Okay. So in your case, my darling, the first thing that I want you to do is we do an exercise called the needs creed, and I'm just going to give you a really brief intro to it. But basically, I want you to think of all of the things you need in your day to be okay, such as breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Yeah. And you make them your highest priority. I know that sounds really, really simplistic, but work out a way that you eat when you feed your kids or whatever it might be, but getting food in, getting enough sleep, the basics are often the first part of this transition. Now, what often happens for people is they are so stuck in Superwoman and sacrifice that the thought of that is just like, I can't. So there might be a step before for you, Tiffany, which is actually a mindset shift around getting you into retiring Superwoman. Again, this is a meditation that we have, Retiring Superwoman, which helps you to internally in your mindset, let go of that Superwoman energy and step into your queen, your mother energy and your sorceress energy so that you can actually activate. If you need to make a mindset shift first to be able to say, I'm worthy of breakfast, then that's your first step. If that's okay and it's just, oh my goodness, I get that I need it, then that would be the very first step, is just looking after those basic needs. Then I would say go do that power type profile report that we're offering you as part of the report package we've got for you guys. See where you're up to, and then that will help you map the journey ahead from there of which of the power types are going to be able to support you. Does that help, hon?
Yes, it does.
I want to hear that you're having breakfast, lunch, and dinner, darling. That's going to be the first step.
I've been working on it for the past week. I've been doing the life book series and also Marissa Peer's Uncompromising Life Through Mind Valley. And that's something that I've been trying to focus on.
Good. This is good. Well done, my darling. This is really going to be critical for you. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. I'm going to use my privilege of being here with my microphone on, because I want to ask this question. Sometimes you have people in your life and you set boundaries with them and they keep breaking them. Like when you were bringing the example of the husband, you can draw out all the boundaries. It's just an easy thing to pick on, but he'll keep breaking them. Okay, husband, you can theoretically walk out of him, but let's say a family member, like a mother. A lot of people have issues with setting boundaries with mothers or fathers or children. What do you do if your boundaries are disrespected by someone you cannot expel out of your life?
Yeah, great question. Really, really great question. So, a couple of things, right? A couple of things. Number one, and we have these sorts of conversations a lot with our clients, is, there's a family member who consistently breaks boundaries or consistently, someone might have a really strong, this is a particular example that we were talking about just a few weeks ago. Someone's got really strong boundaries around not having racist conversations at the dinner table. They have a racist family member and, etc. So they've set the boundaries several times. It continues to be broken. And they're like, well, what do I do about this? So two things. Right? You have to decide, is this a deal breaker for the relationship? That's the first question, because there isn't really any relationship I would put forward, and maybe this is being pretty harsh, but there are very few relationships that you can't end, right? Not that you can't stop being someone's parent or stop being someone's sister, but you can stop interacting with that person. You can expel them from your realm, like banish them from your realm, so to speak. That is always a choice. But for many people, they choose not to banish people from their realm, but to have what I call contextual relationships. So, Dad, yes, you can come over and spend time with the children, and this area of conversation we will not allow. Right. And you just don't go there. If you expel off if you stop the whole, piece where the boundary comes up, you can start having kind of contextual relationship is one way to do it. The next way to do it is the practice of being love. We cannot control everybody. So there is always a choice. And I think this is best exemplified by children. So I have a about to turn 4-year-old little girl who is a force of nature. She caused me to buy the book, How to Raise Your Spirited Child, because I would call her defiant, obstinate, She just doesn't understand the difference between imaginary and real. Like you would say she lies like a trooper, but she's 4. She's just, but she knows that she's not telling. She just she's off the chart, uncontrollable, like literally uncontrollable. No, I cannot find any kind of discipline that works with this little creature. She's extraordinary, but she's a great example of this, right? She does not respect my boundaries. She won't. Eventually, when she's a little older and she can stand on her own 2 feet, I will have the choice about whether her behavior I can tolerate. I'm hoping she will, as she learns a little more social awareness, it will shape, but maybe it won't. When she's older and she can look after herself, I can choose if I want to change the nature of that relationship. Right now, I can't. And I think it's the same for a lot of people that don't. You can also look at it through the lens of people who don't have access to resources for insight or empathy or anything, whether they be disabled or just have a personality disorder, right? There's all sorts of reasons. We can still choose to be love. So there are members of my own family who I love dearly. They don't respect my boundaries, and I choose to love them. I'm just really careful that when my energy is low, I work really hard not to have them in my life on those days. So, they're not the days that I call home and I speak to them, or, if they call up, I don't answer, that kind of stuff. So there's a few different pieces on that, Kristina, but does that help?
Yeah, I really love that you gave this as a scenario to still choose love, because at some point I was very fascinated by the idea that you can cut off anyone from your life, but I actually think the more I live on this planet, the less I want to do that, and that is such a great alternative to keep them, and the suggestion that you gave, that on the days when you feel low, that you're just going to at least eliminate them on those days. So I thank you for this answer. Since we are already coming very close to the end, I have to ask the last question, and
yes,
I do that with huge regret, because I wish we had 2 hours instead.
We'll do it again.
Yes. In fact, while I'm asking the last question, if you guys think that you should want to see Joanna more, let me know. I'll see what I can do. I think we need you. But Joanna, I want to ask this: if there was only one homework or one suggestion or one tip that you would want to share and leave our guests with, what would that be? Something that maybe this one little thing will change their life already.
Oh, God. Do you know, at the moment, Kristina, I'm talking to our community a lot about a concept that I'm calling radical compassion. And this would be the tip that I would leave with you. We are in a situation right now globally where we are under more pressure than we've ever been. And our neighbors, our sisters, our mothers, our friends, our kids are in the same situation. Do you know, we're all in different boats, but we're all in the same storm. And so a lot of our normal coping mechanisms are down, yet our expectations of ourselves, our expectations to be an exquisitely centered and calm mother, our expectations to be a rock star in the office that manages all of the team issues, where your whole team are experiencing this same thing, our expectations to be able to be a great friend. We have all of the same expectations, a lot of us, that we went into the pandemic with, but the resources we have inside of us, even if you are the most zen person in the whole world, the amount that our executive functioning has been used up just on how do I get to the supermarket, how do I get food in my cupboard over the last 12 months, right? That has taken 73 steps, whereas, a little over 12 months ago, how to get food in the cupboard was probably a 3-step process. Just recognizing how much more executive functioning we're using is really important. So therefore, what I say is have more compassion, not just be compassionate to yourself, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, but I'm talking about radical compassion, the compassion that says, I totally am doing awesome compared to what's going on in my world, and I deserve to have an off day. I deserve to go cry into my pillow today. I deserve to go for a walk at lunchtime and get some sun on my skin. I deserve to buy a punnet of raspberries all for myself and just quietly eat them in a corner. Something that says to have compassion all for myself, right? I deserve that. And also to bring this same radical compassion to others, because we do tend to lose sight of in these moment to moments that our kids are stressed out. Our sisters, our friends are also stressed out. And we're all pretending like we're still fine. We're pretending like we're still fine. But, you know, global structures are falling down. There's been major political upheaval. There are protests more and more, like in our energy field. The energy field we're living in is heightened and challenged and full of fear and anger and division, right? And those of us who are sensitive, like I'm sure I know you are, Kristina, and I bet a lot of our community here are today, that's in our fields. And it's not just yours, it's also the people around you. So radical compassion for you and what you need, and an appreciation that all of us are not necessarily our best selves right now.
Thank you so much for this parting tip. Radical compassion sounds really amazing. Traditionally, I want you guys to ask to leave a heart for my guest. I think heart is such a good goodbye. So leave a heart, yes, in the comments, or if you see it in a recording, then in the comments under the video. I had a great pleasure talking to you. Really, it was such a treat. Thank you so much. You're so inspiring. I'm so happy that the world has women like you, because I think we queens, girls, mothers, we need each other. So thank you for being here for us.
It's a pleasure, and thank you so much for having me, Kristina, and thank you to everybody who's been here today. It's been a fantastic chat, so I'm glad it's landed with you. Thank you.
Thank you all for being so active, for your questions. Sorry that we didn't get to air all the questions. Maybe next time. And bye-bye.
See you later.